Hey, what's going on, everybody? Navid is here. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur and creator of Virtual Summit Mastery, and I help people just like you exponentially grow your email list, influence, and revenue. And for this session, we are going to dive behind the scenes of a $5.2 million product launch. It was just shy of that. At least that's what he posted in his JV group, and his name is Stu McLaren. He's the foremost expert when it comes to membership sites. But what a lot of people might not know is that he's done to date 17 seven-figure product launches and many six-figure launches as well. He's the creator of Tribe as well. He taught thousands of people in there. I'm a partner of that program as well, and that usually opens up like a one time a year or something. So we kind of going to dive deeper into how he built up that massive marketing momentum for that launch. Started months in advance before me and the other affiliates started promoting the launch, and that was his biggest launch to date. At least I think that's accurate as well, but I'm sure he's going to share more about that here in this session. So with that being said, warm welcome, Stu.
Thanks, man. Good to be here. And appreciate you and all your support during our most recent launch.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, kind of everything you did there. But, we're going to dive into some stuff you did maybe during the launch as well. But let's start kind of from the beginning. You have done launches for a long time, right? And, you have innovated over the years. Jeff Walker kind of coined the product launch formula, and you kind of using some variations of that with your own kind of style and, a lot of live streams and building that momentum a long time in advance. So how was that evolution for you to just kind of bring us up to speed where we are today? You have done a few launches for Tribe now, but really kind of innovating in the space. So can you talk about that a little bit? How's that been over the years for you?
Yeah, I always like to give credit where credit is due, and Jeff Walker is absolutely the innovator when it comes to online product launches, and that's where I first started learning from him back in 2005. And I'm one of those guys who just loves to be a student first and foremost, and then just keep diving deep and innovating and so forth. And so since that time, we did our first $1 million launch when I wasn't on the forefront. I was behind the scenes helping with that one. But it was old school. It was like teleseminars, and we were, old school back in the day then. But, it's evolved over time. And I think one of the things that I take great pride in is the fact that we double down on the fundamentals of a great product launch. And I'm a stickler for just sticking to the basics and really, doubling down on the fundamentals. And then each year we also try to innovate in one or two big areas to learn, to add something new, to keep it fresh, to keep it creative, and to try new things. And I think one of the worst things that we can do with our businesses is to, just to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and never try anything new. Because when you try new things, you start to discover there's even more upside potential. And this is kind of, as a company, this is one of our core values is innovation. And we're always trying to innovate on, one key area, usually every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen I've seen that kind of evolution also in, from Jeff Walker himself. Obviously we have the video series, the 3-4 part video series to kind of lead up to the sale. But, there's a lot of innovation I think happens even before that whole thing starts. That's kind of the, the event for the launch. But you start now, I don't know, a lot. I saw maybe even in January, your launch was in April, May, and I saw kind of you started in January, kind of building up momentum. So can you speak to that, kind of what people can do or what you did here, so maybe people can take some takeaways from what you did to kind of build up that momentum and have such a successful launch as you did?
Yeah, well, one of the core beliefs that I have as it relates to launches is that the longer the runway, the bigger the result. And meaning that many times people, when they are thinking about a launch, the momentum for most people starts at the time that the launch officially begins. Example, when video 1 is released, that's when they start telling people, and that's when they start building momentum. I believe that a lot more momentum can be created way in advance. And this is something that for us, we focus heavily on, where we're building this momentum way up in advance. And I kind of break a launch down into 5 phases. The first phase is what we call the connection phase. And this happens, usually 3 or 4 months prior to the actual beginning of a launch video. And the connection phase, the whole purpose of it is to connect both up here intellectually and here at the heart. So how do we do that? Well, we create content that, is based around our beliefs, our values, our philosophies, the things that we stand for. Typically, this is video content, but it could be Facebook Live content. It could be, blog posts. It could be, social posts. But we're trying to connect with people both up here and here. So what would be an example of that? Well, a couple of years ago, I saw a video from Gary Vaynerchuk. And I love Gary. I like a lot of the things that he produces, but this one particular video actually rubbed me the wrong way. And the reason is because it was produced, he released this video on a Friday night, and it was actually the Friday before Christmas. And in the video, he was talking about how, everybody in the office has gone home to family Christmas parties and, Christmas parties with friends, and not him. He's like, I'm still in the office, and I got another meeting at 6 o'clock and another meeting at 9 o'clock. And he's like, I'll be here till 11 o'clock. He's like, because if you want to be successful, you got to work your face off. And I remember watching this video, and I was sitting there, I'm like, dude, like, go home. He's got 2 young kids the same age as my kids. And I'm just like, go home, be with your kids. Like, this is not a time to just like work your face off. And so I could feel it in me. There was like a belief in me, like a philosophy about business and life. And that, business is not about, working your face off. At least it isn't for me. It's about creating a business that affords us more time with the people that matter most. And so this is something I felt very strongly about. And so I created a video around that. And one of my early mentors, he shared with me, love me or hate me, there's no money in the middle. And this is a perfect time. During this connection phase, you're not trying to appeal to everybody. You are trying to find your people that believe the same things as you. And oftentimes, this is topics that aren't directly related to what it is that you sell. But what happens is you build a connection here at the heart level. And so when I released this video, it was my version. I called it the hustle video, and it was really like the anti-hustle video. It brought so many people out of the woodwork. And what happened is, like, my audience, the people that felt the same, started sharing it because I was giving voice to the things that they were thinking and feeling. And this is how you start to really build connection. And so we start releasing this kind of content, you typically like 3 or 4 months in advance. And so that's one example. Then we go into phase number 2. Phase number 2 is usually like 1 to 2 months prior to the beginning of our official launch videos. And phase number 2 is the awareness phase. And the awareness phase, what I'm doing here is I'm creating awareness of the solution that ultimately we provide. Now, this is not an awareness of my product. It is not an awareness of me. So at the end of these videos, I don't necessarily want the audience thinking, I want to work with Stu, or I want to buy Tribe in my case. The conclusion that I want my audience coming to is, I want a membership site. Because if they come to the conclusion, I want a membership site, the natural next question they're going to ask is, well, how do I go about doing that? And now they are seeking me out versus me, trying to get in front of them. And so it's a whole different psychology. And so this is where you got to be really, really patient. Like a lot of people in my impact mastermind, a mastermind that I run, they call me the patient marketer because I'm really, really patient during these early stages. A lot of business owners, they just want to jump straight to the sale. And what I like to do is I like to build up and build up and build up and build up so that when we get to the sale, it's easy at that point. The conversions are really high because people know that they really want it, and they're really convinced, and that they've already bought into it mentally before we even get to the point in which the typical sale. So during the awareness phase, this is where we raise the awareness, in my case, of like the value of having recurring revenue and the value of having membership sites. And again, for everybody watching, it would be raising the awareness of the value of what you provide in terms of like how will someone's life be better or different? So we typically share a lot of stories. We started a whole new podcast this year, which every single week we release stories. You can go and listen to that by going to It's a Tribe Thing. You'll hear the podcast of stories of our students every single week, just sharing, how their life has changed and what they're doing with their membership sites and how it's helped and impacted their business. And of course, all the people they get to serve. So that's the awareness phase where we're sharing lots of stories and we're showing people what's possible. And so at the end of that, they're thinking to themselves like, yeah, I want a membership site. I want a membership site. That takes us then into phase number 3. And phase number 3 is, this is your typical product launch, process. This is where the workshop begins, video 1, 2, 3, etc. And phase number 3 is, we call it the desire phase. And this is where you're building up desire. And during this phase is, we're following Jeff Walker's product launch formula to a T. And we're, now we obviously add our own like twists and turns in there, but bottom line is that's the beginning of the pre-launch. Phase number 4 is our open cart. So this is where we officially open cart. And during this week, we are all hands on deck to generate sales. So I'm live a lot. We do webinars, we do live broadcasts. We bring, a lot of students on and share their experiences. We do live like all kinds of things during that week, but it's full on. But we're essentially only open 4.5 days is during our open cart. And that's phase number 4. We call that the buy phase. And then phase number 5 is, we call it the wow phase. And I'm a core believer that the experience people have with your product is really the pre-launch to whatever you want to sell next. So if you have any other products or services or, programs or masterminds or coaching programs or anything, even if you don't even know what you want to sell next, what I want you to pay attention to is that the experience people have with your product or program now is really like the pre-launch to whatever's coming down the pipeline. And so we pour an enormous amount of time and energy, if not more time and energy, into the experience that people have than we do with the actual launch itself, because we play the long game and we know what we do now is going to set us up for what we do next year and what we do the year after that. So if people have an amazing experience and we double down our attention on helping our clients and customers get results, their results are really going to help fuel next year's promotion. Yeah. So that's kind of, a high level overview of the 5 stages. Phase number 1 is the connection phase. Connection phase. Phase number 2 is the awareness phase. Phase number 3 is the desire phase. Phase number 4 is the buy phase. And phase number 5 is the wow phase.
Man, you broke this down really well here in the beginning. I wanted to get into some specifics in kind of the stages, especially in the beginning there. How do you typically market these videos? That's not really to build up the email list initially, right? That's more like, do you do that on Facebook or YouTube? Or how do you market these videos kind of in the connection and the awareness phase there initially?
Yeah, well, essentially we are, in the beginning, like I remember when we started Tribe, we followed this exact same process and we didn't have an audience. And so this was part of the whole reason we were releasing these types of video was to help build the audience. And we jump started a little bit with some Facebook ads. But what ended up happening is that, especially with connection videos, like if you give voice to the things that people are really thinking and feeling, but they haven't yet been able to communicate, people will share. So a lot of those videos were getting hundreds of thousands of views, even though we didn't have a big audience at all to begin with. But like I said, most of the time now, like in this last launch, we were putting it out to our audience and to our list, and they were the ones that were jump starting the views, and then we would spark it a little bit with some ad spend. But for the most part, when you are creating that, it's about like starting discussion around those topics, and a lot of time people will share it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of I guess that's how it is. You don't even mention your product in these videos. I've seen a bunch of the ones you've done. I've seen also other people. I think you kind of started a lot of these kind of videos, and then a lot of people in the space like Ryan Levesque and others, they started to do this as well and doing even better with their launches because they started this runway a lot sooner with these videos and people can connect with their brand a lot better. So, but I know you're also doing a lot of these kind of case studies as well. I mean, you're big on this. I'm big on kind of sharing stories with people because that at the end of the day, that's kind of what's selling the program on its own a little bit. You kind of still got to market it, but with the stories, that helps a lot. So how do you go about that? Do you have a process for kind of getting more stories out there? If someone kind of watching this and thinking, how can I do what Stu is doing or what Navid is doing with kind of having a system for getting these case studies and producing videos, maybe not the highest quality ones like you are doing now, but at least getting them out there?
Well, first and foremost, let's just start with, what's most important. And the most important thing to a story is that your people have gotten great results. So it really, in the beginning, you got to kind of take a step back. It takes a commitment to help your people get a great result. And it is something that we are obsessed with at our company. And this is why, like, every single year, we're constantly like looking at the experience we provide and how we can, up level it and help our people get a result easier and faster. So in the beginning, listen, when you're starting, it's like, people always ask like, well, what if I don't have hundreds or thousands of stories? Like, where do I begin? You start with one. You start with one story. And that means like perhaps you've worked closely with one particular person and you've gotten a great story from that and you leverage that story. The whole purpose of stories is to help show people what's possible. And so this is why you're looking for a range of stories. A lot of times people only go after like the big stories, the big wins. But most often the big wins people can't relate to. So, those stories may be great, but at the end of the day, like if your audience can't relate to them or they can't see themselves in those stories are ineffective. And so an example in my world would be if I only shared the story of Michael Hyatt and what happened in terms of the transformation with his membership, people wouldn't relate to that because they'd say things like, oh, well, of course he had success because he's a New York Times bestselling author. Oh, of course he had success because he had a big audience already. Of course it was going to be a success. And so if I only shared his story, I would get those kinds of rebuttals. But if I share stories of people like Wendy Batten, who, didn't have a huge audience, she had an audience of 453 people. And these are paint store retailers, like not a big market by any means, not tens of thousands or thousands, but a tiny niche of just a few hundred people and a very specific niche. And yet when she launched her membership site, she welcomed over 52 members, generating $2,800 a month in recurring revenue in month number 1. And that gave her the momentum where now she's over hundreds of members. And again, it all started with just an audience of just a few hundred people. And I'll share stories like Wendy or like Anna Saucier, who again, didn't have a huge audience, 326 fertility practitioners and generated over $5,000 in a really streamlined launch in the first 24 hours. We share stories of people in all kinds of stages of their success path is what we call it. But basically like all people who are in different stages of their journey. And the importance behind that is like when you're sharing story after story after story after story, people start to see themselves in some of the different stories that you share. So if I was speaking to an audience that sell physical products, I might share the story of Sarah Williams, who has a physical bricks and mortar store and sells physical products, and yet launched her membership site, a box subscription. And in the first year now has over 900, now she's actually over 1,000 plus members. Again, adding a tremendous amount to her bottom line that she wouldn't otherwise have had. And this is a physical store. Or if I'm speaking to a service-based business, I would tell the story of Mary Claire Fredette, who has a massage business. And she was looking for more consistent cash flow in her business because some months were awesome. Other months, she didn't have anybody coming in. And so she never knew what month was going to be which. And she was looking for more consistent, steady cash flow. So she launched a membership site and ended up welcoming 17 members. And you and I may think like, well, 17 members, that's not really a lot. It's a lot for her because it was like $1,700 of consistent income. And then not only that, but the membership was for a 60-minute massage. And a lot of her clients upgraded to a 90-minute massage. And so she generated more revenue from that. And so one of the things that she was sharing was just the stability that it created for her in terms of cash flow. But it doesn't matter like what audience I'm speaking to. I have stories until the cows come home. And this comes from our commitment to helping people get results. If we don't help people get results, we don't have stories to tell. But as long as we stay committed to helping people get results, we have all kinds of stories from people in the early stages who don't have an audience and have now launched a membership site to people who have a membership site, but maybe it's flatlined. And after coming through and making some changes, they've seen massive increase to people who have seen gigantic leaps in their business because of their membership site. We have stories of everybody in between and in all kinds of different markets and people who have faced all kinds of different challenges. So it doesn't matter who I'm speaking to or where I go, I'm able to share these stories, and the stories do all the heavy lifting. The stories are the things that sell. I don't have to sit here and try to be a used car salesman and try to close people and have these fancy dancy closing techniques. I just share stories. Yeah. And when people say things like, oh yeah, but I don't have an audience, I say, oh, that sounds a lot like, and boom, I would just go into a story of any one of the people that we have. And so how we go about this is that during our tribe experience, we are always have our finger on the pulse of the community. And we're always looking. Like, I don't have my phone on me. It's just on my desk over there. But if I did, I'd scroll through and I'd show you, Like literally every single day, we'll have anywhere between 20 to 30, screenshots, clippings that get posted into a Slack channel. And these are wins that our community are experiencing. Some wins are the big wins, like somebody launching a membership site for the first time and welcoming 900 members, right? Other times they're smaller wins, like somebody doing their very first Facebook Live. And you and I may think like, well, wait a minute, like somebody doing their first Facebook Live, like that's not really a big win. It's a huge win. You know why? It's because it's the lead domino that's going to create momentum that's going to lead to bigger and bigger wins. And so we celebrate the little wins just as much as we celebrate the big wins. And the reason is because it creates momentum in our communities. And when you create this culture of progress, you have wins that develop and happen every single day. And so then it's a matter of capturing it, and then it's a matter of sharing those stories. So it really starts with like, first, once the sale is made, the next focus is to help your people get results. Little results, big results, and everything in between. The results are what matter, because when you have a result, then you have a great story. And then when you have a great story and you share those stories, it helps you generate a lot more sales.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is so important. I'm so glad you shared this, because I think anyone who's in this kind of business, expert business, whatever, you need to focus on this. You need to, when they get into your program, no matter what, no matter the price point you're selling, you need to get them results so you can actually sell your program afterwards. They're gonna be your best advocates for your program, actually. And that's what I've seen for Virtual Summit Mastery as well. We have like every single objection I have a case study for as well. Like I can just kind of pull that up if you're selling high ticket, or if you have a launch, whatever we are doing, I just can do the same. I have different stories for everything. And I do remember it as well. I kind of, have a process for this. I kind of write it down, and then I kind of memorize a lot of these, and I can just bring it up like you did here and just kind of pull it up when I need it. And we do these case studies as well. But like initially, you can just kind of add, what I did initially, I did interviews with the students, just kind of I think it was on Skype or Zoom or something like that. I brought them on there. Now we're doing sometimes in person, like you guys are doing now, Stu, or we just kind of come on a call like this, a little high quality, kind of with an online recording, and that works also really well. So I've seen
and
kind of
Navid, can I just make
sure.
I just want to make a distinction here, because this is really important. There's a difference between a testimonial and a case study. A testimonial is Stu is awesome, Tribe is amazing, I highly recommend it. And those have their place. But a case study has nothing to do with me or our program.
100%.
A case study is showing people what's possible, and it's celebrating the case study. It's celebrating their progress. And so that's a really important distinction, because, if you are heavy on like testimonials, people see right through that. And like I said, they have a place. They have a place in the overall launch. But when you're using stories up front, you don't want it to be about you, and you don't want it to be about your product, because then people's defenses start to, come out. What you want is a story that celebrates your people and shows what's possible. And I'm totally fine if my name or tribe doesn't get mentioned. In fact, when we're filming them, we actually say that to the people that, they don't have to by any means mention us. And in fact, it's actually better if they don't. Because what we want to do is we want to show what's possible, because at the end of those, I want people thinking, I want a membership site. I don't want them thinking I want to work with Stu or I want Tribe. And I know that's counterintuitive, but it's very, very important, especially if you're using these case studies earlier on, because you want people to be very open, and you want people to be very, open to the message and open to the possibility. And if there's a hint of, you're trying to sell anything, people's defenses go up and they're out. So very important to understand the difference between a testimonial and a case study.
Absolutely. Glad you mentioned this, because that's kind of how we define it as well. I think some people do mention like in these, but it's more about celebrating them, as you said, and like really sharing their story, what impact they are making, maybe from their virtual summits, or in your case, their membership sites and the community they're building. So kind of my name and Virtual Summit Mastery in this case is kind of secondary. Yes, they might have had success with it, but it's not like Navid is awesome, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of maybe better during a launch, or kind of a last minute thing in an email or something like that. They could say that. That's kind of when people are ready to pull the trigger and buy. I'm sure we can get a little bit to that as well. But do you market these case studies I saw in your emails kind of early on, that's one way you do it. Do you also kind of spend on advertising to build up that Facebook audience and stuff like that? Because this is not really initially to build up your email list. You don't like say, hey, sign up for the wait list, or is that how does this all play a role to kind of also build up that list early on for kind of the launch?
Yeah, so we do have like other list builders that we create during phase number 2 in particular. So we had our tribe guide this year, and so we had ads that were driving people to, obviously get the guide and submit their email address to get on the list. And during that, like once they did, then we would send them on a regular basis all the different case studies, and we would post them. And so we would post them on Facebook, we'd post them on Instagram, we would email them out to our audience. And yeah, we basically, like every single week, we had a piece of communication that was going out to our existing audience, driving people to go and consume and watch these. Now, in terms of like, using them to list build, we would have a soft call to action at the end, which would just be our URL. So I didn't say anything in the video. Nobody said anything in the video. It was just essentially text that came up on the end that revealed the URL. But the connection videos, there's no URL. There's nothing there. And the reason, again, is because if you want people to share them, the less of that you put in, less call to actions you put in, the more likely people will share. Yeah. So what we were focused on there is generating an audience, a retargeting audience that we could leverage during the launch. But essentially, like the connection videos, there's no call to action. The awareness videos, there's a soft call to action. And then all of which we use and we put that content out in as many different channels as possible to drive attention to it. Main focus that we want is consumption. We just want to rack up views during those first 2 phases.
Awesome. And what would you say worked well with that guide? You said you put together this guide. Was that based on kind of the case studies? Did you share some stories in there as well? Or what was kind of the tips and strategies you shared in the guide that worked well for you, that people really wanted to download that?
This is going to be, revolutionary in so many ways, Navid. Basically, we took our top 10 questions that we typically get about membership sites, and we answered them. But the way that we answered them, we gave lots of different examples. The guide was very visual. People loved it. And we poured a lot of time and energy into crafting a great guide. But at the core of it was essentially answering 10 common questions that we typically get about membership sites. And they're 10 questions that are typically focused on people who are in the earlier stages of growing their business or their membership. And so it appealed to a lot broader spectrum of our audience for sure. But essentially that's just how simple as it was. It was answering 10 questions, and then we just made it look nice. We had some great examples. We had lots of stories interwoven throughout there, and people got a lot from it.
Yeah, and then after that stage, you had that stage. You're actually doing the affiliates a big favor also by starting so early, because they are going to get better conversions, as we mentioned here. So that's obviously a big part of your launches, that you bring on some really amazing affiliates. You had like Amy Porterfield and James Wedmore, Ryan Levesque, other people on board for this launch. And I know that's, if you're watching this, you're not going to get maybe the biggest names in your industry for the first one, right? This is like years in the making for you, like building these relationships up, and, also having a launch that converts well and all this kind of proven and tested. But can you talk a little bit about that process? Like, what did you do to kind of get them on board? And because that's obviously building up the list massively, for you during the actual launch to actually bring in the revenue. I'm sure the majority of revenue probably even came from the affiliates in this launch, right?
Yeah. So what's fascinating is, like, going into this launch, our goal this year was to split the traffic 50-50. So 50% us, 50% our JV partners. And we actually did that. Awesome. In total, we had about 62,000 leads that came into the launch. Roughly half of that was from JVs, and half of that was our own leads that we generated. Now, in terms of sales, it was distributed differently. And the reason is because good or bad, one of the things that we did this year was we had a Facebook group, and we've always done a Facebook group, but we drove all the traffic to the Facebook group. And so even the leads that we generated went into the Facebook group. And so when it came to the open cart time, a lot of our own leads, essentially were converted by affiliate leads, because they were, shopping for different bonuses, which is totally fine. But that's why the weight in terms of the distribution of sales wasn't like the distribution of leads. Leads, it was 50-50. Sales, it was a lot more skewed towards JVs for sure. But that was just through the nature of what we're doing. But we're totally fine with that. Like, for us, we're all in to support our JVs, and we play the long game in this. And I highly recommend that everybody watching and listening understand that when you are incorporating JVs, it is absolutely a long game perspective. There's been a lot of people who have approached me and have started the conversation by saying things like, hey, Stu, I know I could be one of your top 10 or even a possibly top 5 partner. And I was like, great. I said, if you want to share Tribe and you feel like Tribe could help benefit your audience, that would be awesome to have you on board. And then the very next thing out of their mouth is like, well, and I'll do that as long as you promote my upcoming product and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just telling you this from like, being in this world for a long time, over 15 plus years. That's the worst way to approach a relationship. And what I would say is that the reason that, yes, we have some amazing partners is because I've played the long game all throughout these years, meaning like I go into it looking to see how I can contribute, how I can serve, how I can help others first before I'm asking for anything. And I know that sounds like obvious, duh. Very few people do it. The other side of it is that like out of our top 10 partners, 5 of them were Tribers, meaning like 5 of our top 10 partners were our own clients and customers. And then what's even more amazing is that if you back up out of that, let me find the stats here for you. This will, let me see if I can find it. Hang on. Because this will kind of, I can't find it offhand. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. So 5 of our top 10 partners were were Tribers. Everyone in our top 20 had 20 or more sales. Everyone in our top 30 had 10 or more sales. Everyone in our top 40 had 5 or more sales. Everyone in our top 50 had 3 or more sales. Now, here's the most important part about that. Pretty much everybody outside of our top 10 pretty much were Tribers. And so the reason I share that with you is because this is only going to continue to grow. And the reason is because we focus so heavily on helping people get great results. And when they get great results, they have great stories to share with their audiences. And this is why, like, every year the launch just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, not because we're doing anything like dramatically different or crazy or whatever. It's because we've got more and more people coming on board who have amazing stories to be able to share. And the vast majority, like the overwhelming majority of them, are our own Tribers. And so it's something there's a long game on this. We call this the snowball effect. And again, it comes back to just staying hyper-focused and obsessed on helping your people get great results.
Yeah, man, this is so important, the long game for affiliate promos. We do the same even for virtual summits. Like that's why some people have like the negative feelings when they're getting approached, because they have like a requirement. Hey, you need to promote. You need to have X amount of subscribers. We don't do this. Like, the people I bring on, like yourself here, didn't even ask for a promotion or anything like that. What I'm doing here, I'm bringing on people that I want to share with my audience, also promote them. I make sure that I promote them. We repurpose this content. We do other things right with this. That's kind of the core reason I'm doing this. And of course, that benefits us as well, but that's not the main reason. And we have other ways to also generate this. And actually, the majority of people I bring on board in some way, shape, or form, they end up sharing in some way or another at some point what we are doing, because we actually lead with value. And that's kind of what you've done also over the years too. So that's the way forward. Like, don't be pushy and try to get people like, if you want to promote someone, then you promote someone. I wanted to promote Stu. I didn't expect anything in return from Stu. I just wanted to share that with my audience, and that's the way it should be. I mean, you should share something you like and you maybe have used yourself. So that's the way I do it. And I wanted to get into some things around kind of I don't know if you did anything differently. I know you've done this for a few years, the Tribe Workshop, which is kind of amazing. That's obviously a big thing kind of in the desire when you start kind of promotion for kind of the video series and all this. Did you do anything differently this year that I guess, changed anything, improved something? I know you have changed kind of the pages over the years and stuff like that, but anything else that helped?
Yeah, we certainly refresh everything every year in terms of like the design and look and feel and things of that nature. But yeah, we did a couple new things this year. Like one, we did a Tribe for Life contest. So we went to our audience, all of our clients and customers. This was about I want to say a month in advance, maybe even a little bit further in advance, maybe a month and a half in advance. And we did a contest, and it was basically like share your story. And we had, a whole bunch of Tribers submit their story, and it had to be like 2-minute video. And then our team narrowed it down to like the top 15, and then we posted it back out to our community, and everybody voted on who should win. And it created a lot of buzz ahead of time. And it also revealed a lot of stories that we didn't know about. Like, we're on top of it all the time, but many times people in your community, they just won't share the story. And so in this case, like, it brought out it was a handful of stories that were amazing that I had no idea about. So that created some buzz and some excitement in advance. The other thing that we do really, really well is we get our date out there way in advance. So, you'll start hearing me talk already about April 23rd, 2020. I'm talking about April 23rd, 2020 already, Navid, because April 23rd, 2020 is when we are going to be beginning our launch next year.
I got it locked down.
Yeah, exactly. Mark it down. Tell everybody April 23rd, 2020. But the reason that we put it so far in advance is because it gets it in people's minds and they're looking forward to the launch at that point. Like I said, very seldom do you see people build up anticipation for the actual beginning of the desire phase, the launch phase. We do that way, way in advance. That's why I'm talking about April 23rd, 2020 already. But we did that with this year's launch, and it works because it creates anticipation, and people are excited about it. And there were a bunch of fun things that we did. Another thing that happened was this year was a happy accident. Was this wall you see behind me? Basically, that wall is made up of a whole bunch of sticky notes, and it's hard to believe that wall is still up, and those sticky notes have still held, since the launch. But on every single one of those sticky notes is a name of the people that joined us for Tribe, and this became incredible social proof, and it symbolized so much more for us as a team. I would come in, and I would when I stand at that wall and I look at those names, it moves me because I see these are all real people. And not only that, but I know what's going to happen for these people and the ripple effect that's going to take place, for them in their lives and their businesses, but also for the audiences that they're going to serve. And it creates a whole new meaning for what we do as a company. And so that was a kind of a happy accident. That was something that we did this year. It was an idea that I talked to the team about, and it just took on a life of its own, which is something that I'm super proud of. Some other innovations this year, some went well, some didn't. On a Facebook ad side of things, we tried some different types of ads. Last year, we did these highly produced ads, and they bombed. They were awful. They didn't perform whatsoever. So this year, last year, last minute, the team's like, hey, Stu, we need some different ads. So I was doing some different, ads with just my phone, and they were performing like crazy. So we doubled down on that again this year. So I'm just a firm believer, Navid, we keep things very simple, and we do more of what works and less of what doesn't. And so we just pay attention to these things. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's not always so obvious. You gotta debrief after the fact, and you gotta look at, okay, what did work this year? Let's do more of that. What didn't work? Let's do less of that. And so we just try to keep things really, really simple. We stick to the fundamentals, and we just go deep in mastering the fundamentals. The other thing that I would say is that every time you do a launch, you'll start to find little sound bites and little messaging pieces that resonate with people. And this year, more than ever, I really started to lean into that and get clear on what it was that was resonating with people, and how to communicate it, how to say it, and how to position it so that people, connected with it and wanted it. And I think that contributed as well to the overall success of the launch. But, for us, like I said, we pick a couple key components, and we innovate on those, 1 to 2 components. Everything else, we keep consistent, and we just look to improve it and master it, and which is all the fundamentals when it comes to crafting a great launch.
Yeah, and something actually, people are kind of new to these launches. I mean, can you go over the timing of events a little bit during that desire phase, and also maybe anything about the email marketing side of things as well? Obviously, you deliver everything there. So anything there you want to share as well that you did for this Tribe launch?
Well, basically, we try to mirror our communication across multiple platforms. So, essentially, we do first part of the workshop goes out on a Thursday. Then the second part of a workshop goes out on the following Monday. The third part goes out on the next Thursday. So it's Thursday, Monday, Thursday, video 1, 2, and 3. And then during that time, I'm also doing Facebook Live. So I would do a Facebook Live the day after a video was released. And it's, again, to answer any questions, to help people consume the content. And that's the most important piece during a launch, is consumption of your content. If people aren't consuming it, then they're not getting any value from it. If they don't get any value from it, it's not going to create any desire to want your product. So, we lean heavily in terms of how do we help people consume the content easier and more often. And so that's essentially the timing of it. And then the emails that's going out is every day there's email communication going out to people. Every day we're mirroring the communication within our Facebook pages and groups and so forth. And again, it's just to keep things consistent. So the message is always in front of people. People know exactly where they should be putting their focus each and every day. And then when we get into the launch open cart week, obviously the pace of which the communication picks up, because that's the week, or that's not even a full week. It's 4.5 days that we are open where people can buy. And so we are communicating a lot more frequently during those 4.5 days.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing actually, before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the open cart, but like one thing you are really good at, maybe people don't even know this, you have written scripts for a lot of launches. So can you give a few tips? I mean, there's a lot that goes into doing scripts for launches and stuff like that. We won't have time to cover all of this, but maybe a few tips like the video 1, video 2, video 3, and then obviously you have the sales video usually, or a webinar kind of there to open the cart. So what goes into these videos kind of in a nutshell to break this down for people who are kind of newer to this?
Well, video 1 is, again, this is like straight out of Jeff Walker's Product Launch Formula Playbook. Video 1 is all about the opportunity. And the way that I think about this is like, in my case, it's about, how a membership site in particular is the future of business. And this is something I truly believe. Like, this is what you're seeing all big companies like the Amazons, the Apples, and, the Netflix, and heck, even Walmart and Burger King now have membership and subscription programs. And the reason is because this really is the future of business. But in that first video, you're making a case for the opportunity. And if you and I were in court and we were lawyers and we were trying to make a case, what are we looking for? We're looking for evidence to support the case that we're trying to make. And so in that first video, that's how I encourage people to think, is to think like a lawyer, and you're looking for supportive evidence to be able to make the case for this opportunity that you have. So in my case, I'm creating a case around the fact that memberships and subscriptions are the future for all businesses. And I give tons of examples and I share evidence as to why that is the future. And that's the whole focus. So that at the end of that video, people are, in their minds, they're thinking, okay, yes, I see the opportunity and I definitely, want to be a part of that. The second video, I like to think of it as the first step. So like once people are like, okay, yes, I see the opportunity, and yes, that's, I want to take advantage of that. Then it's about like, okay, what's the very first thing that they need to do? So I love to help people, take that first step toward that, bigger, brighter future, if you will. The third video is where you kind of zoom up. And this is where I just call it like the blueprint, or in our world, we call it the success path, whereas you give an overview of like, okay, like what needs to happen in order to be successful with this new opportunity. So we've helped take them through the first step. Now let's open their eyes to like, okay, what else is involved to be able to make this a success? And then the fourth video is basically your sales video. And this is where you are helping people make that transition and make that leap. And what you're providing is you're providing convenience and speed. You're helping people get that result easier and faster. And so that's essentially like the focus for each. Video number 1 is all about the opportunity. Video number 2 is about the first step. Video 3 is about the blueprint, and video 4 is about convenience and speed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great breakdown. I know you even have, I know in Tribe even, I think you provided even scripts for some people like how to do this. This is pretty incredible, actually. It's like you've innovated a lot in this space. So I mean, every year you release this Tribe workshop, and I mean, it's like the quality there is amazing. But obviously, if you're watching, you don't have to start there. You can like do it a lot more simple initially to maybe have, you on camera mixed with slides or whatever. Just kind of so you have the structure of it correctly. And obviously, Jeff Walker talks a lot about this. Stu talks about it from time to time as well, with how to design these kind of videos, video 1, video 2, video 3. So just kind of checking out some resource on this. There's a lot that goes into that as well here if you're on. But going into kind of the open cards, do you want to say something around this as well?
Yeah, because I think like oftentimes, you mentioned the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, and I have. And so, inevitably every year, like we're innovating and we're pouring more energy and resources into, taking it up to another level. And sometimes that can get intimidating for people because they're seeing like, 15 years in the making of what that looks like. And sometimes it can get like overwhelming to think like, oh my gosh, like that's not where I am right now. And you hit the nail right on the head, Navid, is like one of the things that we always recommend is start with what you've got with where you are right now. And, sometimes like if you were to look at my launches like back in the day, they were from, a very simple camera. They weren't fancy. They were very straightforward. I would recommend now doing a live launch, when you're beginning, where you're doing Facebook lives for each of those, videos or parts of those workshops. That's the fastest, easiest way to get going. The key, though, is to master the fundamentals of what you're saying in each part of those, to be able to move people through that desire phase so that when you get to the open cart, people are ready to buy. And so more important is the messaging and the way you say what you say versus the fancy production. And I've had many clients and customers and students who have had tremendously successful launches and did not use fancy video whatsoever. I know you and I, Navid, we both have a passion for the art side of producing great video. But, that's not always easy when you're beginning. And so what I would suggest is keep it simple and really focus on the fundamentals of the messaging for each part of those. And the way you deliver that, it could be with a straight up iPhone. It could be a straight up Facebook Live. It can just be done through email. I've seen many of our clients and customers just do it straight through email. The medium, you can always improve, but the messaging is the most important piece of that puzzle.
Totally. And I mean, I'm so glad you shared that because I've actually done before, a few years ago, I did like a mini course kind of for selling virtual selling mastery. Did like multiple six figures just for like a mini course. Was video based in a Facebook group. So I kind of went live there in the Facebook group and I shared value. Like every day I did like an office hours thing in between these lessons would go live on the page and people commented, got hundreds of comments there and they went live. And that was pretty low key. I mean, I didn't like produce this, didn't take too much time to put together. It was just some stuff we kind of repurposed from other launches you've done and did really well. So or Facebook Live, as you mentioned, kind of on your fan page or in a Facebook group. I think that's a great way to do it. So bringing that back to kind of from you've done the kind of whatever your desired phase is kind of to lead to the open cart. You did a webinar, Stu, I think, kind of before, even kind of for the early birds, whatever you called it there, and then you opened the cart. So can you walk us through that a little bit? Anything that worked really well for you during that launch? I think I've seen you go live more than any other person ever during a launch, which was really cool. I think you lost your voice there at the end as well, but I guess it was worth it to serve the audience in that way. So talk to that.
Yeah, well, I have my throat spray right here. It's because I was live so often. Yeah, well, for us, like we love to get off to a great start during open cart. So we do a webinar right on the beginning end of that. And inevitably the webinar, it walks people through almost the exact same content that we deliver in the three parts of the workshop. It's just condensed into a 60-minute webinar. The thing that I love about a webinar is that I can do a lot of interaction with people, where people are leaving comments, they're raising their hands, all that kind of stuff. So that's always fun. And I think that interactive element certainly helps, create more desire for people. But if you've done your job right, like, creating the anticipation, building the excitement all throughout this, people are ready to buy. And so I love doing a webinar because it's the point at which like a lot of people can join right away, and it creates a lot of momentum and it creates a lot of social proof. So for us, after the webinar, like it was kind of crazy, but we had, 4 hours after we opened cart during the webinar, we had already generated over $700,000. And in that first 24 hours, we had already generated over $2 million. And that just creates a ton of momentum. For our JV partners are excited. We're excited. There's a lot of stickies going up on the wall. So, there's a lot of social proof and a lot of momentum that gets carried throughout the rest of the launch. And so, I'm very, very grateful. This is not just me by any means. Like, I'm fortunate because I've got a great team behind me who have helped so much in like bringing this to life. But at the end of the day, the webinar, the structure of it is very similar to the 3-part video series. And then of course there's the offer at the end, and this is the first chance for people to buy. And, because we have done our job all the way up to that point, people are ready. There's a lot of people who are ready. It's just like when I'm talking about April 23rd, 2020, there are going to be people by the time we get to April 23rd, they're already convinced to buy. They just want to be able to, pay at that point. And so the webinar works as a great vehicle to be able to really jumpstart all of that momentum.
Yeah, and any bonuses that you offer that played a role for kind of spike the conversions during that launch as well? I mean, you had a few, I think, time-sensitive ones that you offer. At least I remember I kind of mentioned that in my emails, at least, that you kind of your team told me, hey, you have this coming out, and I was like, this is cool. I mean, and that tend to work pretty well for me, at least. I just wanted to see if you had anything that you saw much more sales coming in throughout the launch, because usually it's what you said, a lot in the open cart and usually in the closed cart as well. Obviously, you get a big spike there as well. But did you see more throughout the launch as well, kind of in the middle days here too?
We did. We definitely, we definitely saw sales coming in, not as consistent as like day one and the last day by any means. But in terms of bonuses, like there's a couple things. So we have an opening day bonus. And so anybody who joins during the first 24 hours, they get this a certain bonus, and it's a juicy one. So that certainly helps drive sales. We had a happy accident happen actually through the launch itself, because I was sharing the story of Anna Saucier. And Anna Saucier, she was somebody who came to our Tribe Live event, which everybody, who joins us for the Tribe Experience, they get a ticket to. And it's an amazing event because there's a lot of magic that happens at that event. And Anna Saucier was a great example last year. She's at the event. She hears the story of Jamie Swanson, who does her launch in the photography market. And Jamie didn't worry about like trying to get everything perfect. She went for it anyway. And Jamie shared how she used the founding members script. And so Anna, who's sitting in the audience, was inspired by Jamie and says, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to launch right here, right now. And I'm going to use that same founding member script. So she did. And she launched at the event to her audience of 326 fertility practitioners and generated just over $5,024 in 24 hours. So I was sharing that story during the launch, and people were inspired by it. And so people started asking, like, this is incredible. Like, how do we get that founding member script? And so to the credit of our team's like kind of ears perked up and said, well, wait a minute, like, what if we create a bonus around that? And so we did. And so we said, again, when you join Tribe, you'll get the founding member script unlocked right away. So, and we said to people, like, some of you will use it and will launch even before the course even starts.
Awesome.
And that's exactly what happened. So this was like a new bonus that we announced on day 3. And it was amazing, Navid, because people literally like went in, they bought, then they went in and they took that script and they started using that script. And there was stories of like Tasha and Joanne, like Tasha, when she used it right away, within the first, I think it was 3 hours, she had generated $800. Within the first 24 hours, she had generated like, I think it was like $1,600. And within the first 48 hours, it was like over 3,000. And she kept updating the group. I think ultimately at the end of the week, like she had generated just over $7,000 using this script. And she's like, this is crazy. This is mind boggling. She's like, we haven't even started the course yet. And I've already paid for it. And then many times over. And we probably had, I want to say anywhere between 25 to 40 different stories of people who had used that script in that first week and generated all kinds of sales. And it was this a magical thing. We weren't planning, we weren't anticipating. It just it happened, and we ran with it. And so obviously like that created a lot of momentum in some of the in-between days as well. Yeah. And we'll be leveraging that a lot more in next year's launch. That'll be something that we'll put a focus on, trying to be more intentional with that. But it was just magical to watch what happens and how people, again, we're just getting incredible results. It always comes down to the results. If people get results, you got great stories. And if you share those stories, it's going to inspire a lot more people to join. But those are the 2 of the big bonuses that we had.
Awesome. As we're kind of starting to wrap this up, I wanted to just ask, did you do this kind of, I've seen in some of your launches, you did this kind of quick video, like towards the end in close card, which I think is really powerful. Like you just kind of, 2-minute video or something, and you just kind of go on, have that on a page and just talking to people. That's one of the last kind of emails you're sending. That's kind of a powerful trick I've seen you use. I don't know if you used it for this recent launch, and what do you think if that works well for you?
Yeah, I think like at the end of the day, like there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of hoopla. But, one of the reasons that I like to do a personal message, and it's always done with my phone right toward the end of any launch, is I just like to send a personal message. And I just think like at the end of the day, we're all humans. And it's like, it's a, person-to-person message. And it basically says like, look, I know that you've had an interest in launching a membership site. And I just want you to know that there's no better place for you to be able to successfully do that than within Tribe. And I just want to invite you to come and join us. And it's a personal message. It's not like, it's not hypey. It's not salesy. There's no like whiz bang with this, that, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, it's just person to person. And I just think there's a lot of value that goes along with people knowing that there's real people behind this product. There's real people behind this experience. There's a real team behind this. This is something that we take very, very seriously. This is not a grab and go situation. This is something that we're in for the long haul. And I really want to convey that. And so I like sending a personal message that is really grounding and just conveys the fact that we take their success really, really seriously. We invite them to come and join us. And the reality of the fact that we only do this one time a year. When we're all in, we are all in. You know that, Navid. We're all in for the promotion, and then we shift gears and we're all in for the delivery of the product. And so this is why we only do it one time a year, and to remind people of that fact and to encourage them to come join us.
And that's kind of what you're doing now. I mean, that's kind of, I think just this morning before we jumped on here, you had your 10 in 10 or whatever you call it. I mean, sometimes, I don't know if that's supposed to be 10 minutes or 10 questions, whatever, but you're on there for a long time sometimes. It's like longer. Like I've seen you like every day. I see you like go on there for like 1 or 2 hours sometimes for Q&As and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, that's kind of what goes to show. That's kind of the next thing you're doing. You're kind of building up that, you're kind of getting case studies, your team is in there, and that's kind of what you talked about initially, like really important to serve that audience. You're making sales. I mean, in your case, you had thousands of customers coming in through just this 4.5 day period, which is amazing. But then you're gonna serve them because you do this launch one time a year. People know this. When you close the cart, it's closed. You don't reopen, and some stuff some marketers tend to do sometimes. But you are really honest with this, and people know this. And I think that's also, I guess, one of the reasons people they rave about it. I have students I referred. They're already getting a lot of value from the program, and they loved kind of going through this launch and stuff like that. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that and share that here as well, because I've gotten some really good feedback from people coming to your worlds too. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And, there's a lot to be said there, because I'm grateful that they're sharing it with you, because obviously the number one thing for our partners is I want them to have the comfort that their people are going to be taken care of. Like your people, Navid, are going to be taken care of. And not only are they going to be taken care of, but they're going to get great results. I want them reporting back to you of the progress that they have made, because then that helps create an environment by which you're excited to be part of the tribe promotion, not just 1 year, but every year. And that for us is, again, it comes back to the long game. We're not in this for just 1 year of results. We're in this because this year is going to help set us up for next year. And next year is going to help set us up for the year after that. And so it all comes full circle. And at the end of the day, we pour a lot of time and energy into creating a great experience to help our people get great results, because we know the ripple effect in terms of the benefits that's going to have in the following year. And so it comes back to what I was talking about, where, in stage 5, the wow phase, the delivery phase, this is really where this is really the pre-launch to anything that you're setting up down the road. And so you knock it out of the park in terms of the delivery of the product and the program, and you help people get great results, and it'll set you up for the following year.
Absolutely. And where's the best place to connect with you outside of the tribe community? You have a Facebook group there and stuff like that. Where should people connect with you if they want to, follow you along the way?
Best place is the Marketing Your Business podcast. If you just search iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform you use, just search for Marketing Your Business. And it's a regular podcast that we produce, kind of sharing the behind the scenes of how we do what we do. But that's a great place to connect. Or another place is just even on Instagram, just my name, Stu McLaren. And you can find me on Instagram too.
Awesome, Stu. This has been so jam-packed. We kind of covered kind of the full behind the scenes of your $5.2 million launch, or at least almost 5.2. I think it was just shy of that. And, how you got the momentum going. But, wherever you're starting here, if you're watching, listening in, that takes a long time to get to that stage, obviously. That's not really the reason we're doing it. We wanted you to see kind of what you can implement and some strategies you can use for your own business to achieve success. And, Stu mentioned you can even do some Facebook Lives instead of kind of the video series and stuff like that. And, the marketing message and all of this. So you can implement some of these, check out some resources below. I link up Stu's, Instagram and his podcast as well there. And obviously Tribe opens one time a year. So if you're interested in membership sites, that's a good place as well. So leave your biggest takeaway below as well. And I'll see you there, and I'll talk to you guys very soon. Ciao for now. Bye.